Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another potluck wrap up. Now I will be honest, I am recording this on the 15th of July. So I still technically have 2 weeks left of the month to get more reading in. However, I will be with my parents for the next 3 weeks, one of which I am abroad, so I just won't be able to film any sit down videos. And to make sure that I don't miss anything from my schedule, I am filming a whole bunch in advance, and this is one of those things. Am I worried about it with regards to this? Not really. Mainly because I obviously top up this teapot every time I read something. I have a whole stack of books down here that I didn't get to review wrap up last month, and I only read 4 books in the first 2 weeks of July, so there aren't many from July, but I still have things left over, so I'm just going to wrap them up for you. Now, I am using my phone to record because I found that it is better quality than my very expensive camera, which means, stupidly, I don't have my timer thing that I can usually, like, I put it there last time and that was a mistake because you could barely see it, but I'm not doing that. Doing it with a trusty clock to see when I've hit 20 minutes. So at the moment, as of starting, it is 1/4 past, so I will basically be going until 25 to for my full 20 minutes. So we don't have like the super dramatic timer in the background that we do usually. We do, however, have, which is nice. So I'm just going to start as of now. Like I said, it's really hard to say what my reading was like in July because July is not over yet, but I still have a hell of a lot of books to wrap up, and I usually get about 10 books max done, so I'm not too worried. The first one is The Paris Apartment. Now, I have already unhauled this, but I've only unhauled it to my mum because the copy that I had was a really nice hardback, and it had the Lucy Foley signature embossed on the front, which was beautiful. And I'd heard really good things about this author, that she was a great feminist thriller writer, that people really liked her writing in general. She's obviously written The Guest List and something else, I think, prior to, The Hunting Party, that was it. It was like really popular. And then The Paris Apartment was their most recent release. Now, it's really hard jumping onto an author that you've not read anything before and you're reading their most recent stuff that, having just come out, you don't know if it's going to be any good yet because people haven't started reviewing it. I found it so boring. It was so boring. From the first couple of pages, it tries to put the tension right up here, and it just did not live up to it. I will go into spoilers, but I'll start with just the general premise and then you can skip ahead if you want to. The general premise is this young woman, whose name escapes me, has run away from something that's happened to her in London, and she's gone to go and live with her brother in Paris, except on the day that she arrives, her brother goes missing. So when you get there, there's all this like murder intrigue. Was he killed? She's got this really creepy voice note from him that is kind of like, did he die? Did he make it out of the apartment? Like, what's going on? All this sort of stuff. The book really tried to like hammer home how weird this whole situation was. So this Paris Apartment is meant to be beautiful. It's meant to be like worth millions, and there's like loads of different people that live there. And then the plot twist is, if that wasn't clear, I'm just gonna say before I go ahead, this is the spoiler territory bit, right? They're all related to each other. Like, every tenant is related to each other. So you have this woman who is married to, he's clearly a gangster, right? Like, he is clearly like a bad guy. He's like one of the first people that you meet. He's very violent, he's very aggressive, and he basically tells the main character to fuck off like the first second he meets her. And then this couple have like a massive row and she storms out and basically warns the protagonist to like get out of there. It's not worth it. And then you have this other guy who's like a tech mogul. Then you've got this young, very like traditionally feminine Parisian girl. Like, and then you've got this much older woman who is the husband of the man who owns the building, right? And you find out that whilst she is their stepmother, the young Parisian girl is her daughter, right? So they're all related to each other. You've got the 2 boys who are like sons from the first marriage, and basically this guy has been kidnapping women and turning them into prostitutes and dancers, and she was one of his dancers, and she has learnt to be this like really decadent lady, but realistically she is just a gold digger who has gotten way over her head. And then you don't know, the whole time you have no idea if the main character, the brother, has actually survived. You see snippets of him and you see from other different people's perspectives, and that was the thing that I really struggled with. There were so many perspectives. Every single person got a chapter. Every single person got, and then sometimes you would have one chapter and then you would have the same thing happen again from the last person's perspective. And it would be a case of like, she would be talking to the tech mogul and being like, oh, you know, I think he's flirting with me. And then he'd be like, should I flirt with her to like see what she knows, kind of thing. And it's just like the whole thing was like really creepy, but it wasn't sinister. It wasn't sinister as like thrillers go. It was incredibly tame, and I felt like it was just trying too hard. There was no sinister vibe at all. There was no tension because it had tried to like ramp it up on the first page. It just felt so tropey, and I just found it really boring. And in the end, I decided that I would listen to the audiobook and then unhaul it, because then I would get to swap a new book onto my shelf, not because I actually wanted to finish it. So as I said, I've unhauled it. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think it was good. So it's gone, it's out of my life. I don't think I will pick up a Lucy Foley again. If it gets gifted to me, or if I see something that like catches my eye, I might, but the chances are slim. I thought it was so boring. It was so boring. Okay, next we have The Project, which is another thriller that I did enjoy, but I gave it 3 stars. Did I put it away already? Oh, it's here. It's here. It's right behind me. I put it away already. So The Project by Courtney Summers is basically about this young girl who is trying to find her sister. Her sister joined a cult 15 years ago, however many years ago it is, and she's trying to find her sister. It's very difficult to talk about this without going into spoiler territory. So what I will just say is it's kind of set in what feels like very rural America. There are lots of people kind of like going missing and stuff related to this project, and she witnesses very early on a young man committing suicide related to her sister. Like as in like in relation to her sister, not that they're related, if that was... Anyway, so spoiler territory. This cult is being run by a guy who believes he brought her back from the dead. So the main character, who is called Lo, or Glory, she was very sick when she was in, I think she was in a car accident which killed her parents, which is very similar to the book that I've written, with a car accident killing parents and then leaving the main character somewhat disheveled is probably a nicer way of saying it, but because in this she's got scarring, right? So she has to deal with that, whereas in my book she becomes deaf. So there are differences. I haven't just straight up ripped off this book. At least I certainly hope not. Anyway, she keeps attacking this cult and keeps like getting up in their face, and she's trying to find her sister. And then the thing that I just then didn't believe is that she joins the cult. She starts believing this guy, and she starts seeing like what they're doing. And then in the background you've got like these flashbacks to her sister, who is kind of going through the motions of learning that she like loves this man, and she bears him a child, and there's all this sort of stuff going on. And you find out that basically she sleeps with someone else. That's how she actually has a child. She sleeps with someone else. He finds out and he kills her. He drowns her in this lake. And later on, when the lake is dragged up, because the younger sister kicked up such a fuss, then you see the kind of thing crumble. But I just didn't believe that this girl, who was clearly so angry and had so much going on and was so internally fraught, would then just turn around the next day and be like, yeah, sure, and like start sleeping with this guy, even though he is the father to her niece. And like the whole thing, it was just, I just didn't believe so much of it. So much of it took me out of the story, and I felt like I just needed to be like, that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. So it lost me. It lost me in so many places, and because of that, that's why I got 3 stars. There was tension there was intrigue, but I just didn't believe anything the main character was doing. So that is my thought on The Project. I probably will still pick up Sadie though, because Sadie looks really interesting, and it's like podcasty as well, so I think that would be fun. Also, if you can hear the washing machine, I'm really sorry. My flatmate, even though she knew I was filming, decided to put a load on, so thanks, Lizzie. Next we have Grimrose Girls. So I did wrap this up very briefly in a vlog that I did recently, where I'm trying to finish books that I've started because I have started too many. This is basically a dark academia murder mystery novel that has a fairy tale retelling twist to it. And I don't want to go too much into the fairy tale element of it because that would be spoilers, but basically this is an all-girls school in the middle of nowhere in Switzerland, and it very quickly establishes itself as a very elitist boarding school. And then the tension really ramps up when girls start dying. And basically the four main characters are dealing with the fact that their best friend drowned a few months before and no one seems to be doing anything about it. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I generally really enjoyed it. I like that it established itself as a murder mystery first and a fairy tale retelling afterwards. I liked a lot of the main characters. They were really messy, realistic people. I liked that. I liked that it made it very clear which of the fairy tale tropes it was going to buy into and which ones it wasn't. It had LGBT rep, it had BIPOC rep, it had disability rep. So when it comes to Gothtober and you need something that ticks all 3 of those prompts, because those are things we encourage with Gothtober, this would be a great one for you to pick up. Short and sweet. And look, they kind of go together. How cute's that? Okay, next. Where's my teapot? There's my teapot. It's right there where I left it. Next one I'm going to do is Such Big Teeth, which I actually only finished yesterday. So Such Big Teeth is a middle grade fairy tale retelling. Another one. Can you see a theme? Basically, this is the sequel to the first one, which is Darkwood. Now, Darkwood is about a group of witches who are kind of forced into this wood to kind of escape the huntsmen that are hunting them to kill them. But it's very funny. There are very light moments. It's written by one of the authors who works on The Horrible Histories, Gabby Hutchinson Crouch, and it is, to use the phrase I use all the fucking time, it is a good time. This one is a lot darker. It deals with anxiety and PTSD, and it deals with crotchety old witches. What I do like about this is just how thoroughly it subverts so many of the fairy tale retelling tropes. It doesn't really pander to the whole women are going to be submissive and at home or anything like that. It doesn't... It very much endorses kind of women scientists and women engineers, and it's very, very modern for a retelling, considering it still makes itself set in a kind of fantasy medieval era kind of thing. So I really like that balance of it. It did get 4 stars rather than 5 because it did take me a lot longer to get into this one, and my main gripe with this one is that the main antagonist isn't really revealed until the last like 4% of the book. In the meantime, there's a secondary antagonist who isn't really an antagonist, she's just kind of in the way, and the way the story develops, it's just really slow getting to where it needs to be. And it did suffer a little bit from sequelitis. Now, sequelitis can have multiple symptoms. Sequelitis, it can just be that the story didn't develop at all, there was no world building or anything like that. That's not the case for this one. But the other kind of sequelitis is that the world has been established. We understand that you're building the world and you're building these characters. They're not necessarily making the same mistakes as they made in the last one, which is good. But it's also not going anywhere because you're preemptively slowing down so that you can be ready for book 3. And that was my main issue with this one, is it was just, I felt like it could have been 100 pages shorter because the author just wanted to get to book 3. And I feel like this may have started as a duology and then turned into a trilogy because some of the plot points maybe didn't fit in either of the first 2 books, but it was slow going. It was really slow going. So that was my only gripe with it. I still thought it was fun. I still think it's a great read, and it will still be one of the top 10 fairy tale retellings on my list, to be honest. I've got about 5 minutes left. Okay. We have Criminal Insanity, a Joker and Harley graphic novel. Now, firstly, this thing's fucking enormous, okay? Like, it's not chunky, it's just wide. So reading it was tricky, but the artwork is absolutely stunning. And this book made me so thirsty for Joker. Like, even, okay, right, I'm gonna find, there's this one, I just opened it up to this one. But I'm gonna open up to one specifically because I just need you to understand how sexy this man is. So just, okay, he's angsty, he's in a long black coat, like but he is terrifying. Now, don't get me wrong, Heath Ledger did a wonderful Joker, and he is by far my favourite of all the Jokers, except maybe for the Mark Hamill voiced animated version. I don't find him sexy, I don't find the Heath Ledger version sexy, they're just terrifying. Making him a young, attractive sociopath in this was a stroke of genius. I think this is a standalone, but it may be the first in a series. I know that there were volumes in this, so I think this is kind of like the whole story wraps up. But basically in this, rather than Harley Quinzel being his sidekick or just a straight psychiatrist. In this, she is a criminal psychiatrist, kind of like in Criminal Minds, where they study people's mental state to find serial killers. And he is the first one that was basically her first serial killer that she started chasing, because he killed her best friend. And he basically claims that it was like wrong place, wrong time. But she is so good at what she does that she's one of the first people to get close to finding him. And there is very much this like mutual understanding of each other and how fucked up each other are, because they are like also mutually fucking each other over, etc. It was really fast paced, it was really dark, it was really interesting. And if you're not sure if you like DC, if you're not sure if you're a superheroes kind of person, I would give this a go, because there are no superpowers in any of this. These are normal people just doing really fucked up shit. And there's a lot of DC, like the detective, I can't remember what the C stands for, but I know it's like it might be Detective Comics. I know there's like very much a vibe with those to then lean heavier into the supernatural stuff. This really doesn't. It feels like Criminal Minds as a graphic novel. And as someone who enjoys serial killers and has Criminal Minds as their comfort show, would absolutely recommend, if only just to support the artist for their artwork. This is another Cami Garcia. I love their artwork. And then they kind of did it with someone else. I can't remember who the other artist is. It'd be one of these guys down here. But it was spectacular. Really, really dark, really, really sadistic. But just an absolutely epic graphic novel. Would definitely recommend. Is that gonna fit? Oh, it is gonna fit. How exciting. There we go. I think I've got time for just about one more. I've still got loads left over. These are basically like all the books I read in July. We're looking for one of my June ones, preferably. Or earlier. I've got earlier. She Who Became the Sun. So this is an ARC copy, but I did it as an audiobook as well. This is a high fantasy retelling of a battle between China and the Huns. And basically we are following a gender non-binary character. They never really determine their gender, so it's very, very difficult. So I'm just going to say gender non-binary, because basically whilst they are born a girl, they spend their entire life pretending to be a man, so as to survive in this society. And then the other perspective is a man who has been, basically, he's had his manlyhood cut off and is often treated like a woman. And both of these characters are fighting very patriarchal, very misogynistic societies, whilst also trying to kill each other. And it was a really interesting high fantasy novel. And whilst it does very much feel like a historical fiction novel, the fantasy elements such as like the magic and the prayer in it and stuff was really, really interesting. They're very, very clever characters, but this is super, super dark. Like as a novel, it is super, super dark. It would be perfect for fans of the Poppy War, also the Unbroken. If you like the Unbroken, I feel like this would also work. There is a sapphic relationship in this, and there is a fisting scene. No one seems to be talking about the fisting scene. I was kind of warned maybe like 3 days before I started reading it. It wasn't the reason I started it, or 3 days into reading it. And it's a very, you know, mutual, beautiful moment. It's actually done like really tastefully, but it's fucking intense, and it comes out of what feels like nowhere. But I really, really liked that. I really like that this is very much a character study of politically powerful people. Game of Thrones is probably another comparison I would make, just because it has that political intrigue and lots of epic battles. Not as many people die in this one though as in Game of Thrones, and the writing is considerably better, like way, way better. I'm more just saying like in general terms of situation, it's comparable, but that's the only way that it is comparable. Really, really enjoyed this. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. It's a really, really clever novel, and I'm really excited for book 2 to come out. Not that I will get a chance to get an ARC for this one, but fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for me. I'm really tempted to get myself the hardback, just to get the hardback to support the author, because I loved this. So there it is. I managed to wrap up 5 books. I still have way too many in that basket, but that's fine. I will wrap those up in August. If you like the sound of any of these books, the ones that I liked will be down in the description below. If you treat yourself to something from Waypoint, it supports me and my content. So we love that. Let me know in the comments down below, are you likely to pick up any of these? And if you just want to let me know that you were here, leave something red in the comments down below. Other than that, I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.